The blue star that lit the Virex system was slowly dying, but its glow still reached every corner of the great space station called Virex Prime. The station was enormous, more like a small planet than a building. It was built with metals that shimmered like glass, circling the dying star like a crown. Inside, thousands of beings from across the galaxy walked its long halls, each one from a different world, culture, and species. This place was the heart of the Galactic Union Court. Laws made here were followed on every settled planet in the galaxy. Disputes, crimes, and conflicts were brought here to be judged fairly. For centuries, the judges had been chosen from respected alien worlds, noble, experienced, and wise. Never before had a human been trusted with such power. Until now. Judge Alara Miles stood at the tall, curved window of her new chamber, overlooking the arrival docks. Her reflection stared back at her, dark eyes, short brown hair, and a calm face that revealed little emotion. Her robe was the official color of the court, storm gray, with a silver sash marked by the Galactic Union crest. The robe felt heavier than she expected, though she knew the weight wasn't from the fabric. It was from the eyes watching her. Every step she took here would be judged. Ships drifted in and out of docking stations below, some round, some sharp-edged, some like floating jellyfish. Lights blinked on every level. From above, the station looked like a floating city wrapped around a dying sun. Inside, it was a maze of courts, chambers, offices, and corridors that seemed to go on forever. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft chime from the wall. "Judge Miles," said a voice, gentle but robotic, "the Chancellor has arrived and wishes to greet you." Alara nodded to no one in particular. "Send him in." A moment later, the chamber door slid open with a quiet hiss, and in walked Chancellor Drex Thaler, one of the most powerful political figures in the galaxy. He was tall, at least 7 feet, with smooth black skin that shined like polished stone. His eyes glowed faint yellow, and his long robe, deep red with golden trim, flowed as he walked. 4 armored guards followed silently behind him. Drex was Zithran, one of the oldest and most influential species in the Union. His people had been shaping galactic law for generations. He stopped a few feet away and studied Alara closely. "So," he said, his voice carried through a translator embedded in his neck, "this is the face of the first human judge." "I am honored to serve," Alara replied calmly. She didn't smile. "Are you?" he asked, his head tilting slightly. "Virex Prime is not Earth. This court is not, gentle. Mistakes are not forgiven easily." "I don't plan to make any," she said. Drex's lips curled, though it was unclear whether it was a smile or not. "A confident human. That is rare." He turned, signaling to his guards. "Your first case is not a simple one. Many will watch. I suggest you watch your steps even more carefully." Without another word, he left. The door closed, and Alara stood alone again. She turned back to her desk. A large black screen lit up, displaying the details of her first case, the Union versus Kelvaren. It involved dangerous mind control technology banned after a war that nearly tore the galaxy apart. Kelvaren was a Zithran scientist, once praised as a genius, now accused of illegal experiments in the use of forbidden tech. The accusations were serious. If Kel was guilty, he could face life in stasis, frozen in time, never aging, never dying. Worse, if the case was handled poorly, it could shake the trust between entire planets. Drex himself had come from Zithra to oversee the matter. That made things even more political and more dangerous. Alara began reviewing the evidence. She worked through the night, reading reports, witness statements, and lab scans. Some of it didn't make sense. The timeline was neat, too neat. The records were perfectly arranged. But a few key files were missing, dates skipped over, footage marked damaged, names blacked out. It felt controlled, as if someone had cleaned it all up too well. That was her first warning. The next came in the morning. Alara left her chamber early to walk through the halls. The corridors were wide and arched, filled with quiet footsteps and soft conversations in dozens of alien languages. She passed beings with feathered faces, floating eyes, stone-like skin, or long, jelly-like arms. Most of them stared as she walked by. Some nodded politely. Others looked away. A few whispered as she passed. She was the outsider. The first human. She paused before a tall wall covered in carvings. It displayed the faces and forms of judges from over 100 worlds. Some had 6 arms, some had wings, some had glowing heads or metal skin. They all stood tall, carved in pride and strength. There was no human face on the wall. Not yet. She stood there quietly for a moment, then turned back toward her chambers. The hallway was empty except for a figure who stepped out of the shadows. Alara stopped. The figure wore a simple brown robe with the hood up, face mostly hidden. Judge Miles, the figure said quietly. They think you will follow orders. That you will be easy to control. Who are you? Alara asked, keeping her voice calm. Someone who wants the truth to win. Look deeper. The records you have seen are only part of the story. Why are you telling me this? Because if you don't find the truth, the wrong ones will win. And they always win, unless someone stops them. Before she could ask more, the figure turned and slipped into the shadows. She followed, but the hallway was already empty. Alara stood alone, the hum of the station quiet around her. She looked down at the case file again, still glowing on her wrist device. Something was being hidden, and she intended to find out what. The courtroom on Virex Prime was unlike any courtroom on Earth. It was enormous, shaped like a circle, with high ceilings and walls that shimmered with tiny lights, each light representing a world under the Galactic Union. Hovering platforms floated above the floor, each one holding the representatives from a different planet. Some were large, filled with members of species that required wide space or special environments. Others were small, containing only a single delegate. In the center of it all stood the judge's platform, a raised and solid ring of black stone and silver steel. It hovered silently, slowly rotating, so that no one side of the room felt more important than another. This was where Alara Miles would sit. She entered the chamber through the side entrance, her robe trailing behind her, her face still and calm. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her, some with interest, others with doubt. Her steps echoed through the hall, even above the quiet hum of the platform engines and the soft clicks and tones of alien languages being translated in real time. Court is now in session, a voice announced in multiple tongues. Alara took her seat. The trial of Kel Varen, accused of violating Galactic Law Article 7, Subsection 3, unauthorized development and application of mind control technology, was now officially underway. Kel Varen stood below on a narrow platform guarded by two armed officers. He looked calm, almost too calm. His skin, dark like polished stone, marked him as Zithran. His eyes glowed a soft amber, a lighter hue than Chancellor Drex's, but just as piercing. I understand the charges, Kel said when asked. And I will defend myself. Alara gave a small nod. Then let us begin. The prosecutor, an insect-like being from the planet Gartol, clicked its mandibles before speaking. Its voice, high and rapid, was translated into steady speech for all. Honorable Court, the prosecutor began. The evidence will show that Kel Varen developed mind-altering technology banned by the Union. It will show he tested it without consent. And it will show that his actions could have led to mental collapse in thousands of individuals had it not been stopped. A screen lit up beside Kel, showing images, devices shaped like smooth stones, glowing from within. Another image showed a Zithran test subject, eyes wide and frozen, skin twitching. There were gasps from the crowd. Alara watched the images closely. She had already seen these files the night before, but something still bothered her. Everything felt staged. Too perfect. As if someone wanted to prove guilt without leaving room for doubt. Kel remained silent while the images played. When they finished, Alara turned to him. Do you deny these actions? I deny using the technology to harm, Kel replied. Yes, I studied it. But my research was stolen and used by others. I came forward voluntarily when I discovered what happened. The prosecutor clicked sharply. False. He submitted no such report until after his arrest. Kel's gaze shifted toward Alara. That's because the people responsible for the theft are sitting in this very court. The room stirred. Some delegates muttered. Others stared at Alara, waiting for her reaction. She raised a hand gently. Silence returned. Continue, she said. Kel looked straight at her. The technology was developed for medical purposes, repairing damaged neural links. It could help millions. But someone took it, changed its purpose, and used it as a weapon. I believe those people are protecting themselves now by making me the target. The courtroom remained quiet for several seconds. Alara leaned forward slightly. Do you have evidence? Kel hesitated. Not yet, but I believe it exists. And someone here doesn't want it found. That night, back in her chamber, Alara reviewed the files again. She checked dates, data entries, video logs. Something still didn't line up. She tapped her wrist screen, pulling up the court's archive system. List all security recordings for Lab Site 6 from the past 30 cycles, she ordered. The system responded, no files found. That was strange. Lab Site 6 was where Kel's work had been based. There should have been dozens of recordings. She checked another location. Same result, no files found. Then she remembered the words from the hooded stranger. Look deeper. The records you have seen are only part of the story. Something had been erased. Suddenly, her screen flashed red. An incoming transmission. Anonymous source. She hesitated, then accepted it. A single line of text appeared. Check archive node Delta 7. Use manual access. The message vanished. Archive node Delta 7 was an old backup storage center located in the lower levels of Virex Prime, rarely used, mostly forgotten. Accessing it would not be easy, and if someone was watching, they might try to stop her. Alara stood, her mind racing. This was no longer just a trial. It was a game of control. Someone powerful was hiding something, and they thought a human wouldn't look deep enough to find it. They were wrong. She reached for her court badge and secured it to her robe. She was going to Delta 7. The deeper levels of Virex Prime were unlike the shining halls where judges walked and ambassadors debated. Down here, the walls were old and unpolished. The lights flickered, and the air felt colder. Fewer beings came this far. Only engineers, security teams, or those with something to hide. Alara Miles walked quickly, her court badge clipped to her robe. It gave her clearance to be here, but not many judges ever came this deep. Her footsteps echoed softly against the metal floor. She followed the map on her wrist screen. Archive node Delta 7 was located behind an old security checkpoint. As she walked, she passed a row of locked doors, each marked with faded symbols from forgotten systems. Some doors were sealed completely, their access pads dark. When she reached the entrance to Delta 7, the scanner blinked red. Restricted. Manual access only. Just as the anonymous message had said. Alara reached into her robe and pulled out a small data spike. It wasn't standard issue. It had been given to her years ago by a friend in Earth's cyber division, a tool that could unlock older systems still running on core code. She slid the spike into the control panel. The screen flickered. Override accepted. Door opening. The metal door hissed and slowly pulled back. Inside, rows of glowing data cores lined the walls. The room was cold and filled with a low, humming sound. Some cores were cracked or flickering. Others still pulsed steadily with light. This was where forgotten data went, unseen, untouched, buried in silence. She approached the central terminal and keyed in the archive ID for Lab Site 6, the place where Kel Varen had worked. The screen blinked, then filled with old, dusty files. Hundreds of them. Video logs, test results, access records. All marked as erased in the main court system. Someone had deleted them from public view, but not from here. Alara opened the most recent file. A video began to play. The footage showed Kel Varen in a lab, standing beside another figure, one wearing a red cloak with golden trim. The figure kept their face turned away, but Alara recognized the cloak. She had seen it before. Chancellor Drexthaler. Her heart beat faster. In the video, Kel looked uncomfortable. He held a data chip in one hand. You said this would be for medical use, he said. The figure in red replied, it still is. Just faster, more effective. With a little push. Kel shook his head. You want to use it on living minds without consent. That's not why I built it. You built it because we asked you to, the voice said, cold and firm. And now it belongs to the Union. No, Kel whispered. It belongs to the people it could help, not the ones who want control. The video ended there. Alara stood frozen for a moment. Chancellor Drex, one of the highest leaders in the Galactic Union, had not only known about the project, but had likely directed it. And now he was trying to silence the truth by blaming Kel and erasing the evidence. She downloaded the files to her wrist drive and backed them up twice. She knew what she had now, proof of corruption. But she also knew what it meant. If Drex had been behind this, then exposing him wouldn't just shake the trial. It would shake the entire Union. Suddenly, the lights in the room flickered. Alara turned. A faint hiss came from behind her. Someone had entered. She moved quickly, hiding behind one of the data cores. Footsteps echoed across the metal floor. Heavy boots. Military pattern. Two figures entered. She caught a glimpse of their uniforms, private security. Not from the court. Hired men. She's been here, one of them said. Scanner shows manual override. Spread out, the other replied. Orders were clear. No witnesses. No leaks. Alara's breath caught in her throat. She had expected resistance. She hadn't expected an attempt on her life. She waited for the guards to move further in, then slid out from her cover and moved quickly along the edge of the room. The exit was behind them, but there was a maintenance shaft in the corner. She'd seen the layout earlier. She crouched and opened the shaft door silently. Cold air blew through. She climbed inside, dragging the cover back over the opening just as one of the guards turned. I heard something. They moved toward the core she had been behind. But Alara was already crawling through the narrow tunnel, heart pounding, fingers wrapped tight around the data chip in her pocket. She climbed for several minutes through the shaft, then exited in a hallway near the mid-levels of the station. She stepped out, straightened her robe, and walked calmly toward the lift. No one stopped her. Back in her chamber, she locked the door, secured the windows, and set up 3 layers of security on her data system. She uploaded the video and placed an automatic send function. If something happened to her, the files would be sent to every high court judge and ambassador on the station. Only then did she allow herself to breathe. Chancellor Drex had lied. He had set up Calvarin as a scapegoat. He had ordered the use of forbidden technology. And now he was using the power of his office to hide the truth. But now she had the truth. And soon, the court would too. Judge Alara Miles did not sleep that night. She sat at her desk, staring at the data crystal she had pulled from the Delta 7 archives. It contained proof, clear, undeniable proof, that Chancellor Drex Thaler had been involved in the illegal mind control experiments. The very technology that had nearly been used to enslave minds across the galaxy. The very tech Calvarin was now being blamed for. Alara played the video again, just to be sure she hadn't imagined it. Kel's voice was calm, concerned. Drex's voice, cold and commanding. The words were clear. The intent was even clearer. Now she knew why the evidence in the official case file felt too perfect. Drex had cleaned it. Someone at his level had the power to delete files, change testimonies, and pressure witnesses into silence. But he hadn't expected anyone to look in the deep storage. And he certainly hadn't expected a human judge to take risks. A quiet buzz came from her comm device. A message. Chancellor Drex requests a private audience. Courtroom Summit, Level 14. Immediately, Alara stared at the message for a moment. She had expected this too. She picked up the data crystal, slipped it into a hidden compartment inside her robe, and left her chambers. The walk to Level 14 was silent and long. The lights on this floor were dimmer, the hallways wider. When she entered the summit chamber, Drex was already waiting, standing near the wide glass window that looked out into the stars. He turned as she stepped in. "Judge Miles," he said, his tone polite but sharp. "Thank you for coming." "You requested me," she said. "Of course." He smiled faintly. "I thought we might speak, honestly, before tomorrow's trial session." "I've always spoken honestly, Chancellor." Drex's smile disappeared. He stepped closer. "I know what you found." Alara stayed still. "Then you also know I'm not afraid of using it." "You should be," Drex said, voice lower now. "Do you really believe the court will accept evidence pulled from an old, sealed archive? Do you think they'll trust a human over a High Chancellor? Over a decorated Zithran leader?" "I think," Alara said evenly, "they'll listen to the truth when it's shown clearly and without fear." Drex's eyes narrowed. His golden pupils gleamed. "Judge Miles, you're a guest here. The Galactic Union offered your world a seat at the table. But it can be taken away just as easily. Earth is still young, still learning. This trial is your test. Fail it, and Earth fails with you." Alara didn't move. "Earth isn't on trial," she said. "But you might be." Drex's lips tightened. He turned away, walking back toward the window. "You're making enemies," he said. "Powerful ones." "I'm making a judgment," Alara replied. "That's my job." Drex didn't respond. He kept his eyes on the stars outside the window. After a moment, Alara turned and left without another word. She knew he wasn't bluffing. Drex had the influence to turn entire worlds against her, to question her ruling, or have her removed. But what mattered most now wasn't her seat, it was the trial. Back in her chambers, she activated the protective broadcast system she had installed the night before. If anything happened to her, the evidence would go live across all judicial networks. But she wasn't finished yet. The next morning, the courtroom was more crowded than ever. Dozens of new species had arrived, representatives, observers, and media officials. News of the trial had spread across the galaxy. Everyone knew this case was different. No one knew why yet. Calvarin stood in the same place as before, calm but alert. The prosecutor repeated the charges. The screens replayed the same perfect evidence. It all pointed to Kel. And yet, the courtroom felt uneasy, like something bigger was hanging in the air. Alara sat quietly until the arguments ended. Then she spoke. "This court has heard the evidence," she said, voice clear. "But yesterday, I discovered files that had been removed from the official record." The room went silent. "These files contain a recording. It shows a conversation between Calvarin and another figure, during the development of the mind control technology. Murmurs spread across the chamber. Delegates leaned in. Some looked worried. Others simply watched. "I will now play that recording," Alara said. She tapped her wrist device. The screen lit up. Kel appeared on the screen, holding the data chip. Then the figure in red, face mostly hidden, but voice unmistakable. Drex's voice. The room filled with gasps. Some delegates stood. Others shouted. The chamber buzzed with noise. Alara let it play to the end. She said nothing. The truth had spoken for itself. When it ended, Drex was already rising from his seat on the floating platform above. "That recording is false," he shouted. "It's a fabrication. A human fabrication." Alara stood slowly. "This recording was pulled from the secure archives of Delta 7, she said. "It matches the internal timestamps of the court's own system. It cannot be edited. It is real." A representative from the planet Dralum stood up. "I call for the Chancellor to be investigated," she said. A second voice followed. Then a third. Then more. Drex looked around. The room was turning. He shouted again, but now the security forces were moving toward him. 2 officers approached his platform and ordered him to surrender. He refused at first, but they raised their weapons. Drex stared at Alara one last time. His eyes were no longer proud. They were afraid. He stepped down from his platform and was taken into custody. Alara sat back in her chair. The court slowly returned to silence. The evidence had been revealed. The lies had been exposed. But she knew it wasn't over yet. Tomorrow, she would give her final judgment. And the galaxy would have to decide what kind of justice it truly wanted. The courtroom was quiet, too quiet. For the first time since the trial had begun, there were no side conversations, no murmurs from the floating platforms, no whispering interpreters. The air was still. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in silence, waiting for one voice. Judge Alara Miles stood alone at the center of the court, her gray robe flowing gently around her feet. The light from the central dome above shone down on her, soft but bright. Her hands were folded, calm. But inside, her thoughts moved quickly. She had spent the night preparing her verdict, reviewing the case from beginning to end. The evidence against Kel Varen, once clear and overwhelming, had been exposed as manipulated. The missing data had revealed Drex Thaler's deep involvement. The mind control project had never been a lone scientist's dangerous idea. It had been directed, funded, and hidden by one of the galaxy's most powerful political leaders. But that didn't mean the court would easily accept her ruling. Drex still had allies. Kel was still Zithran. And Alara, despite all she had proven, was still human. She tapped a control pad beside her, and her voice echoed through the chamber. "This court is now in final session," she said. "The verdict in the case of the Union versus Kel Varen will be delivered." Every representative turned to face her. Lights dimmed slightly. Even the guards stood still, weapons low but alert. Alara began to speak, not quickly, not dramatically, but clearly. The charges against Kel Varen included the illegal development and use of mind control technology in violation of Galactic Law Article 7. The evidence presented at the beginning of this trial showed clear connections between Kel and the technology in question. She paused and looked down briefly, then continued. However, this court later discovered files that had been hidden, files which were deleted from the main court records but remained in the Union's backup archives. These files include direct communication between Kel Varen and Chancellor Drex Thaler, revealing that Kel did not act alone and that the project was directed from a higher level. A few gasps echoed from the upper platforms. Alara continued. "Steady." The files further show that Kel raised objections, that he attempted to stop the misuse of the technology, and that he came forward only after realizing the extent of the deception and manipulation. She looked across the room, meeting the eyes of the delegates who had doubted her, ignored her, or feared what she represented. This court recognizes that Kel Varen participated in the development of restricted neural technology. However, based on the full evidence now available, it is clear that he was not the initiator of illegal activity, nor the one who intended to weaponize the technology. Another pause. The tension was thick now. Therefore, this court finds Kel Varen not guilty of all primary charges. Whispers spread instantly through the chamber, relief, shock, even applause from a few platforms. Alara raised her hand. "However," she said, "this court also recognizes that Kel Varen did not report the danger immediately, nor did he take action to prevent misuse until after the program had advanced. For this, he bears responsibility." She turned toward Kel, who stood motionless on his platform. As part of this ruling, Kelverin is ordered to enter a one-year term of supervised scientific ethics review and will be barred from neural research for 3 standard cycles. He will be allowed to return to civilian life under monitored conditions. Kel closed his eyes briefly. Not out of protest, out of quiet understanding. The court now calls for a full investigation into Chancellor Drexthaler and any Union officials connected to this project. A separate legal process will begin. The security officers near the exits nodded and began securing the area once more. Drex had been taken into custody the previous day, but now his name was officially part of an open investigation. Alara gave a final statement. This trial was not just about one man, one machine, or one planet. It was about truth. And the truth is never easy. It is hidden, reshaped, and feared. But it is also the foundation of justice. She took a breath, feeling the full weight of the chamber pressing in. Let this trial remind every world and every species that no one is above the law, not even those in power. And let it remind us that justice must be protected, even when it is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or dangerous. She stepped back from the podium. The court lights dimmed again. The trial was over. Kel was escorted gently from the courtroom, not in chains, not as a prisoner, but as a free man. Some delegates nodded in respect as he passed. A few lowered their heads, embarrassed by how easily they had followed the wrong story. Alara returned to her chambers slowly. As she walked the long halls, she saw fewer eyes filled with doubt and more filled with thought. Some beings offered her respectful nods. A few even gave her space, a sign of earned recognition. Back in her chamber, she removed her robe and placed it carefully on the stand beside her desk. She had passed the trial, but not just the trial of the court. She had passed the trial set by the galaxy itself, the unspoken question of whether a human could stand with strength, fairness, and truth among the stars. Outside her window, the blue star of the Virex system burned faintly. Its light was fading, but it still shone. And so would she. Her comm device chimed. New message. Judge Miles, another case has been approved. Details classified. Destination, Vesker system. Priority, high. Alara smiled faintly. There would be more trials. But for now, this one was done. The trial was over, but the echoes remained. Virex Prime no longer buzzed with whispers of doubt about the human judge. Instead, the halls carried a quiet, steady respect. Delegates still walked with purpose, but now their gazes held a different tone when they passed Judge Alara Miles. They looked not at a human outsider, but at a judge who had done what few dared, spoken truth to power. Alara's name now appeared in news reports across the galaxy. Some praised her courage. Others called her reckless. But none could deny that she had changed something. The court would never be the same. In her chamber, she reviewed the files once more, not out of doubt, but to make sure everything was in order. The final judgment had been recorded, the investigation into Chancellor Drex had begun, and Kelverin had already been escorted to a neutral facility to begin his probation. Her wrist screen blinked. Another message. Confirmed travel to Vesker system? Departure in 6 standard hours. Case briefing to follow. Alara tapped the screen to delay the confirmation. She needed a moment before the next storm. She walked once more to the large window overlooking the stars. The dying blue sun still glowed at the heart of the station, casting soft light over the fleet of incoming and outgoing ships. She pressed her palm to the glass and let herself feel the stillness. She thought about everything that had happened. The anonymous message. The hidden archive. The guards sent to silence her. Drex's threats. And finally, the moment she had played the evidence before a courtroom full of skeptical, powerful minds and turned them. It had all happened so quickly. But in her mind, every step remained sharp and clear. A soft knock came from the door. Not a mechanical chime, but a physical knock, rare on Virex Prime. Alara opened it. Kelverin stood there, flanked by 2 peace officers. He looked tired, but his eyes were steady. I wanted to speak with you before I leave, he said. Alara nodded and gestured for him to enter. I still don't understand how you found those files, he said after a pause. Everyone else ignored the signs. Why didn't you? Alara sat down across from him. Because something felt wrong. The evidence was too clean. The fear in your eyes wasn't the fear of guilt. It was the fear of being buried alive by a system too powerful to question. Kel smiled slightly. You were the first one who listened. You were the first one who didn't lie, she replied. He looked out the window. I had given up hope, he said quietly. You reminded me that even the most broken systems can be repaired if someone's willing to take the risk. She nodded. Justice doesn't fix everything, but it keeps the lies from spreading. And that's a start. They spoke for a few more minutes, then the officers signaled it was time. Kel stood, bowed slightly, and left without another word. Alara remained seated. Her thoughts turned to Drexthaler. The once proud chancellor now sat in a sealed holding facility, awaiting trial. He would have his own defense, his own courtroom, his own moment to face the law he had tried to manipulate. She would not judge him, that task would go to another. Her job now was to move forward. 6 hours later, she boarded the diplomatic cruiser that would carry her to the Vesker system. The crew greeted her with stiff formality. They had heard of her, of course. Everyone had. As the ship left the docking bay and drifted into the black void beyond the station, Alara watched Virex Prime shrink behind her. Its gleaming rings of metal, its thousands of lights, and the blue star at its heart all faded into distance. Ahead, new stars waited. New worlds. New truths. Her next trial would come soon. Maybe harder, maybe more dangerous. But she was ready. The galaxy had doubted Earth. It had doubted her. Not anymore. Judge Alara Miles had proven that justice had no species, no shape, no border. It belonged to all who dared to seek it and stand by it. And she would continue to stand.